Hello there, so here I am talking to you about the books that I really enjoyed last year in 2021. So these are my favorite books of 2021. But first of all, I want to wish you a happy new year and health, of course, happiness and lots of good things, good ratings, of course. Let's head straight to the books because I've been trying to record this video for the past 2 weeks and I've been failing miserably. So today is the day. I'm not gonna speak at length about the books because I have already spoken about this, not all of them, but a few of them on my booktube channel before. So I am going to just present you these books. Most of them are pretty famous, so most of them are pretty famous, so you've probably heard about them already. The first one is Life After Life by Atkinson. So it was a book that actually came out in 2013. I am a little bit late reading it today, but I was so lucky actually to read it because it's such a crazy and fantastic book. It's a story of Ursula. She was born in 1911 in Britain, and in February during a snowstorm, and she actually dies right away. And then it's a story of Ursula. She's born in February during a snowstorm in England in February of 1911, and she lives, and this is her life, the life that takes different paths. You follow her following those different paths, going through the First World War and then the Second World War, going through our love stories, our aspirations, our remorses, and how life can be different, according to your choices. It's also about the family and, of course, the life in Britain during these wars. So it's a beautiful, beautiful novel. I really, really loved it. I couldn't put it down. I took it with me everywhere. Which is rare. I every time I had like a 5 minutes, spare time, I was just reading it. I don't know. I can't explain it, but I was so fond of Ursula. So thank you, Kate Atkinson. The next book is LeAnne Howe, Savage Conversations. So I have pretty sure I've talked about this book on my channel, so I won't talk about it at length. It's a totally different book, short one, strong one. It tells the story of Abraham Lincoln's widow. I don't know if you knew, but she was put into an asylum by her eldest and only surviving son after her husband passed away. They were told that she was hearing voices, and the author decided that the voice that she was hearing was the voice of a savage Indian. And this savage Indian is one of the 38 Dakota Indians that Abraham Lincoln put to death. Yes, he decided that these 38 men deserved to die by hanging back in I think it was 61 or 62, I'm not sure, because a few Dakota Indians went at night and murdered white settlers. I think it was like 1 or 2 families, not a lot, but in his great thinking, Abraham Lincoln thought it was a good thing just to hang 38 men, just to let them know that, of course, the white men were the strongest ones, the most powerful. So it's a very strange meeting between the ghost of this Dakota man and the widow of Lincoln, and they exchange and they talk, and yes, it's amazing book, a short one, strong one, one of a kind. So if you want to know more about it, please read it. The next book was a great book. It's by Yuko Tsushima, Territory of Light. So it's a Japanese author. I didn't know her. She wrote that book actually in a magazine in the late 70s. It's a story about this young woman. She is, I think, 28 years old. She has a little daughter with 2 years old. And all of a sudden, her husband leaves her. And at that time, in the Japanese society, women cannot be, divorced. So she's left alone. So she moves to this apartment in Tokyo. The apartment is at the top floor of this building, and all with, big windows, and the light comes in and the color changes during the day and at night. And she goes through seasons, and she goes through her depression because she's been left alone, by her husband. He has left her for another woman. The atmosphere of this book is so unique. I'm not fond of Japanese authors usually, because I don't think their characters are usually too one-dimensional or two-dimensionals, but not enough for me. They don't have many layers. They're missing something. But in that book, I never felt that. I loved the atmosphere. I love the setting, and I'm looking forward to reading more of her work. So it was Territory of Light by Yuko Tsushima. The next one is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. So it's a famous one. You all know it. You've heard about it at least. The book won the Women Prize for Fiction in 2021. I wasn't going to read it because it's not my type, my genre, fantasy. I'm not into it. But it's more than that. It's like the modern story of Candide. It's a weird book. You follow this beautiful character, Piranesi. He lives in these giant halls filled with giant statues, and every single day the waves come in, because of the tides, and he knows where to go. He knows how to protect himself. He also cares about skeletons, yes, about human people, dead human people that he's found, and he's very protective of them. And he doesn't have any friends except but one that comes to visit him, and he's the one to bring him, his like notebook or pen or anything he needs to record every single tide and every single day. And he thinks his life is fantastic. He doesn't have any memory of his past, and he doesn't really care until one day he understands that there's someone else in these halls. Not just him and his friend visiting him, but there's a third person. It's a great book. It does ask you, can we be alone? Can we be, what is loneliness? What is being single? Does a human need other people? What is the other? How do we define the other? What do we expect of our lives, our society? Yes, and it's so well done, and it's such a short number of pages, which is amazing. She takes you to that world, amazing world, and at the same time she makes you think about your own life and about humankind. It's just a gem. It's a gem. I read it just before Christmas, and I think it was a perfect time. And Piranesi, oh my God, I cared about this guy. He's so nice. He's so candid. So please read Piranesi. Don't be afraid. It's almost magical in a way. The next book is Sula by Toni Morrison. So what can I say? I'm reading all the books written by Toni Morrison, and this is, I think, my third one. It was an amazing one. It's a story about the friendship of two girls growing up in Missouri, Sula and her friend Leeuw. And at the age of 18, Sula decides to leave, to move to a big city. And 10 years later, she comes back, and she has this past. Her family is unique. She grew up with a grandmother and a mother, and they were both independent women. Of course, at that time, women were not supposed to be independent. They don't have any husbands. They've had children from different men. They have a bad, reputation. They are not welcome anywhere. And Sula is the daughter coming back 10 years later, and she's gonna follow the same path. And she's gonna, of course, see Leeuw again and see how their own journey had taken them on different paths. And it's a strong book. It's amazing. I love Toni Morrison's work. And she proved with that book that she's a mastermind, definitely. The next one is Elizabeth Strout. So there are two books I've read of her. One is Olive Again, which is a follow-up of Olive Kittredge, and the other one is Oh William, which is a follow-up of My Name is Lucy Barton. I read the first book I've read of Strout was actually My Name is Lucy Barton in 2018, and I fell in love with Lucy. She's a strong but also weak character. She's this woman who has she's so thoughtful and so brilliant. She's an author, actually. She is living the best life in New York City. She's married a wealthy man. She has two beautiful daughters. That's in My Name is Lucy Barton. And everything goes well until she has to go to the hospital just to undergo a normal surgery. But things get wrong, they go wrong, and she's got an infection and has to stay longer in hospital. And that's when her mother, out of nowhere, out of the blue, comes to visit her. And she hasn't seen her mother in years. Lucy has grown up in Amgash in Illinois with her mother and father and her brother and sister. And they were so poor, they were actually living in a garage. Her mom was just doing some chores and sewing, I think, yes. And the father was an abusive man, alcoholic. He was, probably being abusive with his kids, but also his wife. She hated her life. She really hated it. And she was able, through literature, she was able to get, a scholarship and to live in Illinois. And she never wanted to go back. She did once with her husband, William. And she wanted to introduce him to her family because her sister and her brother stayed in Hamgash. But she wasn't welcome. She was kicked out by actually her mother and her father. So she had never, gone back there. And of course, all of a sudden, her mother is here in the hospital, and she doesn't know why, because her husband, dad has passed away, and they never, kept in touch. But she's here, so maybe there's something, to do about this relationship, or this strange connection between a mother that never showed any affection and a daughter who, has been looking for one. So it was a beautiful book. And at the end of my review, I wrote that I was so sad it was standalone and that I would never had the chance to see Lucy again. And oh my God, I was wrong, of course, because she wrote Oh William, that I read just a couple months ago, and I loved it. It was so good. It's taking place years later, I think probably 25 years later. So she's in her 50s, and she had got divorced from William, and she had married someone else, but he just passed away. So she's a widower now, and William comes back into her life, and they both had this very difficult past, difficult childhood. And that's probably why they are so close in a way, still so close after all these years, and despite the fact that William was not a good husband at all. But they're gonna go on a journey together, and it's a great book again. I think it was filled with so many thoughts that, and so many things about, time passing by, family ties, family secrets, deception, lying, because there were so many lies, cheating, everything. This book can be a little bit overwhelming, but it's a great book. And Strout is such an amazing writer. The other book I read was Olive Again, and I was so glad, so happy to be back with Olive. Olive Kittredge is this old woman. The first book, she was, I think, in her 70s. In the second book, she's like in her 80s. And in Maine, she lives in Maine. She was a math teacher. And she's never been appreciated by people, even our neighbors, the other people. But still, Olive is one of a kind. She has this very strong temper, and she speaks her mind, which of course doesn't, please everyone. And yes, I love this character as well as Lucy. They're both very deep in my heart. And of course, I was really happy to see Olive again. So being, back with Lucy and Olive was such a treat for the end of the year of 2021. Thank you, Elizabeth. And the next one is The Night Always Comes by Willy Vlautin. I'm not sure, I'm sure you're saying Vlautin. In French, we would say Vlautin. He's a writer. I've been reading his book for the past 3 years. He has written books before that I haven't read yet, but that I have bought, and I still plan on reading. This book, The Night Always Comes, takes place in Portland, and you follow Lynette, and Lynette is such one strong character. She's this young woman, and she's been working 2 jobs and studying at night at a community college, and she's saving every single penny to help her mom buying her flat she's renting with her mother and her brother. Her brother is an adult, but is mentally handicapped. And so Lynette is taking care of her brother. She does take him to work in the morning. She feeds him, dresses him, puts him to bed. It's crazy. So she doesn't really have a life out, taking care of her family, but she's had a rough teenagehood. She actually ran away for a year, and it broke something between her and her mother. Of course, her mother went through hell, but things are, going pretty well until one day our mother does something and all our plans are crushed. Lynette is a fighter, and Willy is such a good writer. Richard Russo, who read the book, said that he was so scared for Lynette, and I was too. I think I read it in a standalone because you just want to know what's going to happen to Lynette. But she fights back. The previous book he wrote last year in 2020 was so sad that I was a little bit scared of the ending. But this one was more, how do we say, optimistic, but still so good. It's the characters in Willy Vlautin's books are so well developed, so in depth. It's crazy. I mean, they are alive, as well as, Olive or Lucy. Just for me, these people are alive. They're not just characters. And that's what makes them so special. So thank you, Willy. And I'm looking forward to reading your other books, of course. The next one is The Removed by Brendan Hobson. So I've talked about this book in length on my booktube channel. So just go and watch it. But Brendan, I have to say thank you again, because every single book of Brendan is such a gem too. It's like Willy, he loves his characters, and this time you follow a family, a Cherokee family, who lost her youngest son to the police. Police killed him when he was 15 years old, and ever since their family has been completely apart. The daughter has left home and she's been living a strange life. And the other son, the oldest brother was murdered by the police, and the youngest son actually ran away and he got into drugs, and now he's been, missing for years. And her mother is always praying for his safe return, and she hopes that for the national Cherokee holiday, they will, all of them will be reunited. Strong family story. Beautiful characters again, emotions, yes, everything is in it. So you have to read The Removed by Brendan Hobson. I'm trying to go faster because I see the time lapse, and it's just, time is going so fast. The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. Well, I don't have to say anything. I mean, it's with Erdrich. And this book is actually in homage to her grandfather, who fought for a tribe in Washington, D.C. So the story takes place back in the 50s, where they were on the res, and you follow the grandfather. At that time, he's not a grandfather, he's just a father who was working as a night watchman in a factory. And in the same factory works his niece, and she is the other main character of this novel. And her older sister Vera has moved to Minneapolis, but she hasn't given any news, and they feel that something is wrong about it. So one day, Patrice, her sister, the main character, decides, to go to Minneapolis to find her. And at the same time, her uncle, the night watchman, realizes that the governor, a Mormon at that time of North Dakota, wants to actually terminate the turtle reservation. So that means no more fundings, no more reservation, no more protection of the land, anything. And he decides, just to fight back. It's a great book. Again, I loved it. I read it during my Christmas holidays, and yes, another great book, another great author. I can read anything by Louise Erdrich, and just like the previous authors I mentioned, which makes me realize that all the books I'm talking about are actually written by my favorite authors. There are a few new ones, but it seems to me that I'm really faithful to a few of them, and that it's always such a pleasure to be back with them and to follow their new heroes. Another book, the title in French is Là où ça fait mal by Sarah Leeuw. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Her last name is actually either Belgium or from Netherlands, Sarah Leeuw, but she's actually a Canadian, and she's an English-speaking Canadian. But the book was translated into French. My friend in Quebec offered me that book. It's a collection of essays, and it's a great book. She lives, I think, in British Columbia, somewhere, close to this very sad but famous Highway of Tears, where all these Indigenous women are, going missing now. Most of them are being, kidnapped and then murdered, and sometimes alongside this highway, the police finds their bodies. So anyway, she lives among this, huge, never-ending woods, forest, and her essay collections is stunning. I read it. I couldn't put the book down. Yes, what a collection. I didn't know that. I never heard about that woman, this author, before, and I want, of course, to read more of her. But it's difficult for me to find her books in France. But she deserves more attention, and she really deserves to be read. Please read her. I love the way she mixes past and present tense, how she talks about, of course, these women, but of the way where she lives, the isolation, the fact that when you live in the middle of woods, it definitely, brings a feeling of loneliness, of solitude. She's not like, she doesn't live in Vancouver. It's a strange book, but at the same time, it's mesmerizing. Yes, Là où ça fait mal, which I think in English is Where It Hurts. Not sure. I will put the English title on the screen. And three non-fiction books. Almost forgot. The first one is actually Jane, a Murder by Maggie Nelson. I love Maggie Nelson. I've read all her books, so it's easy, And of course, I read the red parts about her aunt. Her aunt was murdered when Maggie wasn't born at that time. When she was a student in university, she was looking for a ride to go back to her family for a vacation, and she left a little, ad at that time. You just put a little ad hanging on the wall in a student's hall, and one guy said, "Okay, I'm gonna drive you," and he was the one who was going to murder her, unfortunately. And the murderer wasn't found for at least 30 years. I think she was murdered at the age of 23 in 1964, something like that. And he was actually arrested like 30 years later. And that's when she wrote the red parts, because of course, it was crazy for a family that finally someone was found, and and a trial for this gruesome murder. And she never really, I mean, she knew about her aunt, she knew about Jane, but her mother never really talked about our sister, of course, because it was so much suffering every time she brought our sister back. And in Jane, a murder, it's even better. It's so emotional because she found her aunt's Jane's diaries, and you can read her when she was 12, 13, 15, and a little bit and during her last year as a student. And yes, it's so touching. But at the same time, she talks about her mother, about the trial, about dealing with grief even 30 years later. And she gives life back to Jane with her diaries. You see how tempered ill-tempered she could be. You see this little teenager so in mad with her parents, mad with her sister and her sister. It's one of a book. I mean, it's yes, very strong book. I think it's going to be one of the books I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, definitely. And the other two nonfiction books I want to talk are The Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. So you've heard about it. I think I've made a booktube, a video about it, so I'm not going to talk about this book at length, but about the Sackler dynasty. They founded this huge dynasty, and the three brothers back in New York City back 100 years ago, around, yeah, maybe before the Second World War. And they became very famous because they were the first one to actually look for treatments for psychiatric illnesses, mental illnesses, which at that time was just amazing, because if you remember, at that time people didn't care about mental disease. People were locked up in asylums, and you just threw the key away. Later they tried electroshocks, they tried lobotomies, but they never tried to cure them, or at least to find a treatment. And Arthur Sackler was the first one to think maybe we can create a pill that would help them to with their disease, schizophrenia or any psychosis, everything. And they had to find another pill, another miracle pill, and they decided to treat the chronic disease like back pains. And that's when they 20 years ago decided to put on the market those pills that we know today as opioids, and who create addictions. And Patrick Radden Keefe wrote Say Nothing, which was one of my favorite reads of last books of 2020. And again, it does an amazing job at investigating this family, this dynasty, and how people just by greed can put the lives of so many Americans at risk just for greed. It's crazy, it's scary, and it's such a great book. And wait, I'm missing one book. Brother, I'm Dying. Oh, Edwige Danticat. Edwige Danticat is the author. She's from Haiti, and her family moved in New York City when she was 12, but she actually stayed with her uncle and aunt in Haiti from the age of 4 till 12. Until 12, her family left when she was 4. They left Edwige and her brother, and they, of course, grew up with their family in Haiti. And Edwige Danticat tells the story of both her families, especially her father and her uncle, brothers, and at the same time the story of Haiti. And Haiti's story is one of a kind. It's a very harrowing story. It went through so many things, bad things, unfortunately, and today it's one of the poorest countries in the world. But what is amazing about Edwige Danticat is a love for her family and for her country. And even though she doesn't live there anymore, her ties are so strong to her homeland. It's an amazing memoir. It's one of my best memoirs. It's one of my best reads and definitely one of the best memoirs I've ever read. It's one of my top 5 memoirs. Yes, it's a great book. It's called Brother, I'm Dying by Edwige Danticat. The last one, finally, because my God, we're in the 33rd minute of this video, is Phillip Lewis, of course, The Barrowfields. It's my favorite book of the year, 2021. I've talked in length about that book because I read it back in January, I think, or February. So can you believe it? It's his debut novel, his first book. Never seen someone writing like that, their first book, but he has. I'm looking forward to reading his next book. I hope he's working on a new one. But this one has definitely, stolen a piece of my heart, but I'm glad he has. It's an amazing book. So these were the 12 best books of 2021. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, though my English is so poor today. I find it hard to articulate, and I don't know why, actually. It's harder for me, maybe because during winter time, I'm usually like, a bear. I'd rather go and sleep for the 3 months and just wake up in March. But it's not possible. I'm not a groundhog. So I hope to see you soon. I have actually bought many books during my Christmas holidays. So I would like to show a few of them to you and to show you as well my current readings. So take care and see you later. Bye.